In the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate, who is also the source of peace, today's daily random talk is promised on Thursday, where we use game theory to analyze the current Middle East conflict and the players within it. Today, we are going to use game theory to predict the outcome, probably the Nash equilibrium position, after analyzing the various possible outcomes or the various kind of games played in game theory. By players in an ecosystem. This is a geopolitical ecosystem of the Middle East, in the Persian Gulf, Arabian Sea area. So we'll also give an introduction to the game, various kind of games played by players in any ecosystem. This includes the zero-sum games, non-zero-sum games, including the positive-sum games and the negative-sum games, Prisoner's Dilemma, and the Kylo games, together, and John Nash, who got a Nobel Prize in Economics for determining what is known as the game, Nash equilibrium in game theory, the optimal predicted outcome of any game. So we start with, we will also on Thursday discuss the various outcomes which the players want. So let us start with the Prisoner's Dilemma game and how it will play out, or how it is playing out. The United States has given various proposals in its ceasefire agreement to enable the end of cessation of hostilities. Right now, the ceasefire is already in place, although it has been slightly been broken by all the parties. Both the parties, major parties involved in the conflict, the United States and Iran, which includes Iran to give up its nuclear program for at least 20 years. It stops its missile development program. And opens up the Strait of Hormuz, giving slight concessions that they would release the Iranian assets which were frozen since the time of the Shah of Iran's overthrow in 1979, which were held in American banks, because Shah of Iran during that time, Iranian oil used to also be denominated in US dollars, and the surpluses in US dollars were banked in US banks and financial institutions, which were all frozen after the overthrow of the Shah of Iran. But these assets belong to the people of Iran, past and present, and future also, which Iran has demanded that they be returned for a long time. Opens up its release from its economic sanctions. So US has given certain items where the sanctions will be lifted. Not all items will be lifted, of course. plus removal of the blockade of Iranian ports, which the US is enforcing through its naval presence in the Gulf, in the Gulf region, and the removal of US will remove the blockade on certain conditions, of course, and the uranium which has been enriched, we understand it's up to 60%, with 90% once it reaches enrichment, then it is weapons grade uranium which can be used to create nuclear weapons. Iran, it should be US lifting and destruction of that uranium that is insisting. Iran has given a counter proposal that Russia takes it. It has done it previously under the Obama administration agreement which they had, which was the agreement which was cancelled during the first term of Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, saying it didn't go far enough. So Iran continued its nuclear program for the past 5 years or so. Then the issue of centrifuges and whatnot, which Iran says it has to keep the equipment and be subject to regular checks. But all this is under negotiation currently. This is what plus the US wants. All the Muslim Islamic countries, majority countries in the region, to recognize Israel under the Abraham Accord. They all become signatories to the Abraham Accord, which currently only the United Arab Emirates has signed. Saudi Arabia is insisting before it signs this agreement, Israel has to move its border to the pre-1967 border, and the two-state solution for the Palestinian and Israel is implemented, then only it shall recognize Israel. So most of the other Gulf Arab countries like Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, Iraq have the same condition. Iran also has to possibly accept the Abraham Accord as per demanded by the United States for recognition of Israel as a state. You see, what we have to understand is the Palestinian governorate under the Ottomans Empire's dismembering in post-First World War. This whole area was Palestine, and in 1948 there was a UN resolution whereby it gave 1/3 of that land to form the state of Israel. How Israel has expanded its borders and what not, that's a total different issue. So it has to recognize the state of Israel, and because the Arab states refuse to recognize Israel. They say you can have Jewish people living in Palestine, but they do not have to form a state. So a two-state solution, the peace treaty was done in 1992 with Yasser Arafat of PLO, where they got the Nobel Prize, then the Israeli Prime Minister, I think Yitzhak Shamir, and Yasser Arafat. However, the two-state solution has never been properly implemented by Israel. It should be noted. So they want the recognition of Israel. So now the game is UAE has already shown its cards that it has recognized the Abrahamic Accords, but right now it is also becoming lukewarm. The other submissive players who are prisoners, now who is going to break ranks first and become a US ally is for the most likely situation. So that is the prisoner's dilemma facing each and every state within that region, including, you would say, Yemen, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Turkey, and basically all members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC. How are they going to react to this demand of the United States and Israel? So we will surely expect piecemeal recognition of breaking of ranks possible as an outcome of the prisoner's dilemma solution. Oh, the second game is the zero sum, non-zero sum, and games. The zero sum game is the winner take all. However, the problem with the zero sum game here is that there is no clear victor, because the stated objectives of the United States and Israel to attack Iran was to attack Iran similar to Venezuela, do a regime change or have the regime collapse through swift attacks within a week or so, and within a month they are through with the operation. However, this has not taken place. Neither has the US and Israeli raids on Iranian territory resulted in the people revolting against the Islamic Republic leadership of the Faqih, including the then head of state, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was succeeded by his son, Ayatollah Mujtaba Khamenei, the Walayat al-Faqih, is a cornerstone of Shia belief. Iran is a Shia majority country, and there is a guardian council of the Faqihs, basically the jurist between the presidency and the supreme leader. It still remains in place. The political leadership remains in place. There was no collapse of the state, nor was there surrender by Iran. It has managed to stay afloat in spite of the blockade of its ports, unable to send its oil to one of the breakers of the oil embargo and sanctions, which is China and India. Still the ships are going, the tankers are going from Iran. So the blockade also was partially effective. It has not achieved its aims. So a zero-sum game is really not possible because Iran still stands tall, and Iran also has attacked the submissive players and US positions within the Gulf, including, I understand, almost 900 US aircrafts have been hit when they were trying to do the raids in Iranian territory. Oh, some planes have also been brought down. Ships have been attacked. American ships have been attacked, and some sunk. Warships, cruisers, destroyers, and the American allies who had bases, American base, military bases, whether it was an air base or a naval base like Bahrain, those bases were also hit, and those countries were also, as collateral damage, hit, like Bahrain, UAE, Qatar. Qatar had the air base. UAE had a military base. Kuwait had also been hit. It had also an American air base. Even Saudi Arabia, its oil facilities, Saudi Aramco, which was a joint venture between US and Saudi Arabia for Gulf oil production in Saudi Arabia, has also been hit. So by Iranian missiles, so it is Iran has demonstrated its ability to defend itself and also attack using homegrown missiles, which are comparable to American and other powers' missiles. Plus, Iranian drones have also inflicted a lot of damage within the same sphere. So it is basically more like a stalemate. No objectives have been met of the US and Israeli attacks, so there is no clear victor. So a zero-sum game cannot play out. In a zero-sum game, what would have happened is Iran fully capitulated. It would accept, a new regime would come in, a puppet regime, probably led by a descendant of the last Shah of Iran. The last Shah of Iran has passed away. May God bless his soul in peace. Would be in place, but and what would have happened is Iran would have stopped its nuclear enrichment, and Iran's nuclear reactors and whatnot would have been dismantled by the United States. Its uranium taken away to the United States, and a new regime coming up which would recognize Israel and sign the Abraham Accord. That would have been a zero-sum game, a victory for the United States, the dominant player. Iran, the defiant player, would have lost completely, and it would become almost like a failed state like Iraq, is what the United States, when it attacked Iraq in 2003 to remove Saddam Hussein. Till today, there is no proper functional government in control in Iraq, and all the debts of the war have also been put on Iraq, and Iraq is busy paying the debts in courts. for US coming and its allies coming on their own to remove Saddam Hussein, because he supposedly had weapons of mass destruction, which he never had. This was attested by Nancy Pelosi in her interviews. So it will have become like a failed state with 3 or 4 groups fighting over it, and no one in control. But it has Iranian regime has held. A zero-sum game outcome for Iran victory would have been destruction of all the oil facilities of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, Qatar, which hosted the US military bases, and a complete withdrawal of the Fifth Fleet of the United States Navy based in Bahrain, closing down of all the air bases of the US and military bases in Iraq, in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Qatar. And Israel giving up, withdrawing from the territory which it is occupying against the United Nations resolution. The access, the Palestinian areas, which I understand are gas rich. That is the main reason for the Palestinians. Areas which Israel wants to push the Palestinians out into, from Gaza into Sinai area, Sinai Peninsula of Egypt, and Egypt takes responsibility for the Palestinians there, and up in the West Bank, push them into Jordan and take over the West Bank. The Gaza area is where the gas finds are there, and which have been the gas concessions have been put up for auction. The interested parties wanting to exploit the gas fields there, but it is not possible to do that now. So that is the situation in a zero-sum game. A non-zero-sum game would be a negative sum game would be totally annihilation of Iran, probably the United States and Israel, both of whom possess nuclear weapons. They destroy the whole of Iran, as threatened by US President Donald J. Trump, that he's going to destroy the entire civilization of Iran if his demand for accepting his terms for Iranian capitulation was not accepted. I think it was March 7th deadline, March 21st deadline, March 23rd deadline, all of which has passed. He was going to destroy completely the Iranian civilization, and he threatened the US would get nasty. I believe the choice of words was very wrong, or US President Donald Trump. That would have been a negative sum game, that they nuke Iran completely. However, nuking Iran would also mean there would be radioactivity. You have to understand that even if the nuclear warheads coming in and are intercepted or destroyed, they would fall within the area, within the wider region, which means there would be radioactivity in the entire Middle Eastern region, including the entire Arabian Sea and the Persian Gulf and the countries which border on that, That includes Oman, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, UAE, Bahrain. All of them would be affected by the radioactivity, depending on how the winds take that radioactivity. Even it could reach as far as Israel. So it would destroy the entire ecosystem. Basically, the fisheries, everything in the sea would also, if anything, the radioactive nuclear materials, even if intercepted, and see, it is not going to disarm the radioactivity in the nuclear weapons, in the nuclear warheads. So in the uranium in the nuclear warheads, the radioactivity would be there in the region and beyond. The other reaction would be the Iranian allies would also reciprocate. Like maybe North Korea would nuke Israel, or it would shoot missiles at American cities like New York, Washington, Los Angeles, Houston, Chicago. See, the nuclear weapons headed missiles do not need to hit the target in the right place. Even if they are intercepted, they will fall within the wider US area landscape. If it doesn't hit New York, it will somewhere near New York, and the radioactivity would move, would go in the air and destroy the entire environment. When it falls in the Atlantic Ocean, the sea life in the Atlantic Ocean would be damaged, or in the Pacific Ocean it would be damaged completely, for possibly for not decades but maybe even for centuries. It would be a total non negative sum game, which is an outcome which all of us in this world want to prevent, or it could lead to a total nuclear war between the US and its allies, NATO allies, with Russia enters the war with nuclear weapons and shoots around Europe in nuclear weapons, in UK, in France, Germany, and they would also shoot at Russia. China could also enter, occupy Taiwan. North Korea would go and occupy South Korea and Japan. It would be really a disastrous outcome. There would be no winner. There would only be losers, irrespective of who finally questionably wins. There is no winner when the whole world is going to be full of radioactivity. Maybe the end of our human race as Homo sapiens would come. That will be the worst outcome of a negative sum game. A positive sum game, on the other hand, would be to accept compromises in both areas and have a comprehensive peace agreement for the Middle East with a Middle East Economic Union, which includes Israel and Palestine. Both the regions would be there, and all the countries of the Middle East, including Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Yemen, and possibly even you could go as far as Pakistan and other Central Asian republics like Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Armenia. It's all possible. A comprehensive peace agreement, all of them recognize Israel, and they also guarantee each other's security. It becomes a security pact like NATO, together with economic union like the European Union, where there is free movement of labor, of people, meaning labor, capital, both physical and financial, and goods and services within the region without any tariffs, and the whole region would grow together with a peaceful environment. It would be a total positive sum game. Iran would be Iran's what do you call nuclear program would be monitored by the International Atomic Agency and maybe when US, China, and Russia, that it is used for civilian purposes, and it agrees that it will not give the nuclear weapons to non-state actors like the Hezbollah or the Houthis. However, if there is a comprehensive peace agreement, the Houthis and will become part of the Yemeni peace agreement once they have accepted that agreement, the comprehensive peace agreement, and also the Hezbollah in Lebanon would be part of it, and they would be commercially be integrated within that, so they would have no reason to be fighting, as the reason for their fighting and conflict would dissolve, as the Palestinians would be given their own territory, and they would all be integrated and interconnected economically. Iran nuclear program could be used for industrial electricity production, medical cancer research, cancer treatment, radioactive treatments, and it would go into consumer industrial production rather than focusing on military industrial production. Saudi Arabia would be able to host its expo in 2030 in a peaceful region which is open to all, and people would be expo which will open up the entire region, and people would come from all over the world, including from the region, to sell the goods, to display the goods and their materials and all what they have in the expo, including the Iranians, the Turkish, and it would be able to properly diversify its economy for the post-oil economy. It would also be able to host the World Cup in 2034 peacefully, and all the countries there, including Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman, would be able to reach their economic objectives of diversification of the economies and become service-oriented, investment-oriented economies. It would be a region which prospers with prosperity, heaven and earth possibly, with using Iranian and Israeli agriculture methods to farm arid areas, to turn them into arable areas, grow trees, more trees, increase the forest cover. It would be a win-win situation for the whole world, as more rainfall would come and in this world's forest cover would increase. That would be a win-win situation for everyone. The Cairo Games would be different scenarios would play out, and the scenario with the best outcome would eventually be taken, which takes account of the key objectives of each of the party players in the game. The expected Nash equilibrium would be a compromise in between the zero sum game and the positive sum game, I believe, because nobody wants the negative sum game outcome. It would be not be in the interest of anyone, not even the United States, not even Israel, not even Saudi Arabia, not even Iran. So the most likely situation would be a reduced period whereby Iran would be monitored in its nuclear program by International Atomic Agency. It agrees to maybe annual or semi-annual reviews. Iranian uranium would be taken away for 5 years and kept by a neutral third party, most likely China. China, Russia, and US would underpin that Iran and keep tabs on Iran so that it does not start its nuclear program within that period, and Iran would gain by having its naval blockade lifted completely, a partial return of its frozen assets by the United States, or maybe a gradual return in stages based on different compliance adherence schedule. A symbolic recognition of Israel as a state without the hardcore demand of the US and basically in Israel, because without giving Israel full recognition, or subject to certain performances on stages similar to Iran's, that it gives up part of the land which it is currently occupying against the United Nations resolution of 1948, determining the border between Palestine and Israel, and setting up of Palestinian state. It would be also a gradual recognition in pieces by the Middle Eastern countries, including Iran, say over the next 5 years. And Palestine would have a functioning government, a contiguous, right now there is no contiguous line between the West Bank Palestinians and the Palestinians in Gaza. That whole thing would be as per the 1967 border. They would get back their land, and Israel would move back under the guarantees of the United States, China, and Russia. To the pre-1967 borders, and the Palestinians would have a state, a workable two-state solution, and there would be generally peace in the area, in the region, would be, so everyone would be gaining something, but not everything what it wants. That is the most likely Nash equilibrium. the Iranian regime would remain in place. And its economy would also move towards industrial goods production, and later on see whether the GCC, or the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, could be transformed into a economic union at a later date, subject to meeting all the parameters. That might be the most likely outcome, the Nash equilibrium of the current Middle East conflict. Thank you. Be blessed. Have a great weekend. Amen.